Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us this evening on JSlay Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. Guys, tonight's going to be another fun one. We got some very distinguished guests on once again, Matt Cubbler and Robert O'Neill, both distinguished in their own ways. Long list of accomplishments. They're back on for part 3 tonight, guys. We're going to keep this ball rolling. On night number 1, we discussed the raid itself that Robert was on, taking the shots at Osama bin Laden, hitting him. And, there was a little friction there. There was some questionable things about some of the details, but we had a lot of fun. And what we showed was we can have some disagreements on things and still get along. Night number 2, we talked about Matt Cubbler's friend, Joe Price, who was suicided in his bunk, and there was some real issues and a potential cover up about that. I encourage all of you to go back and watch parts 1, parts 2. Those links will be in the description at the end of this show. But after Joe Price, we got into Robert's Ridge and the story of John Chapman, and I'd interviewed Lori Chapman, and that was all about extortion. No, that wasn't Extortion 17. That was Robert's Ridge. My bad. There's so many of them, right? And I think that's kind of the point. Going back to 9/11, for me personally, this whole story got started for all of us in the mind of the Americans who were old enough to consciously know what they were seeing. It was a big deal, and for 20 years we were in a war. And over time, even the most patriotic Americans that thought we were doing everything for all the right reasons, we had to start look at some tough things that maybe we didn't want to look at initially for the first several years there. And as time has gone on for me personally, I've realized how important it is to excavate the truth as soon as possible so that people don't die needlessly, so parents can be told the truth about what is or isn't happening with their sons and daughters overseas. And ultimately, it's a part of corruption. If you can get to the truth, you can get rid of corruption. And I know both of my guests agree with that very much. So, guys, I'm very excited to have both of you back on. Matt, Rob, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Yeah, glad to have you both back. And as we get into this thing, tell me that before we jump into Extortion 17, which that was the largest loss of life in a single day or night in Navy SEAL history to that point, or maybe even to Special Forces history to that point. Do you guys both have a fairly strong familiarity with the story, at least the main points?
Yeah. I knew pretty much everybody on the bird. I worked with them for a long, long time. I served in squadrons with a lot of the guys, went through selection with a lot of them. Knew the guys all around. And then I was part of a squadron that backfilled them. So months after the Bin Laden raid, I took a team and went back over there to FOB Shank, which is in Wardak, which is where they launched from. And I was actually, we slept in their rooms. We used their B huts. Same. So I know what happened.
What was that called? B huts?
B huts. The Seabees will go over there. They can knock out a B hut in like 3 hours. It's a great, it's a building made out of cardboard with stadium sofa seating and a big TV so we can all watch Entourage when there's no missions going on. Not that bad. If you got to live in Afghanistan, I recommend a B hut or one of the presidential palaces.
There you go. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like low level. Now, not that was low level, but low level minor league baseball. Like it could really suck some of those stadiums. We did that exact same thing, dude, probably around the same time, watching Entourage in the locker room, some crappy little flat screen TV that we got from Walmart that by the end of the season, we would return it because we'd say, oh, it's got a dead pixel. We'd return it, get our money back. just living lean, dude.
That might have been one of the things that pissed me off most about not most, but making light of it, but pulling out of Afghanistan with leaving everything behind. We used to have huge mill vans full of plasma television. You could get any you wanted all the time. And just a big waste of money. Obviously we left all the TVs there. I could have used a few of those in my house here.
Heck yeah, dude. You bring those back
and maybe one of those
Christmas
one or two of those helicopters. Sure, yeah.
Hey, one thing before, well, I'll ask you next, Matt, but I got a question about the helicopters that I want to ask before I forget. Matt, what about you? What's your experience been in terms of learning about Extortion 17?
Well, after getting brought in on what happened to Job and cultivating contacts and speaking to people, and then having people recognize the work I'm doing who are also in that world, who are digging and pulling at strings, who have contacts and connections. I just get read in on a bunch of different things. And one of my main contacts is very much involved in the things that happened with Extortion and the information surrounding that event, and what actually was fired at the helicopter and how that connects to Benghazi. And there's a big web of connectivity between those three main events with UBL and Extortion and Benghazi. So he has more of a personal knowing the people involved. Mine's more of a behind the scenes connection points within, maybe outside of the SEALs world, where some dirty stuff is going on.
Yeah. And that's been the shocker to me. Not that it shouldn't have shocked me, but I guess the connectivity you talked about between the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound. Then I got to meet Charles Strange and interview him, whose son was one of the SEALs. I believe he was a SEAL. Is that correct?
No.
Michael Strange. What was his? He was what was his?
No, he was not. Mike was not a SEAL. He was. He's not necessarily an intel guy. He would track phones. He could figure out where guys were and kind of lead us. Now, I'm not trying to take away what he would do, because when we get off the helicopter, and we'll get into this later, but like, he's on the ramp of the bird. He's going to be one of the first ones out, and then he's going to be with the recce guys, the snipers, walking point to get us to the right spot. And he knew more about it than I do, but I did have those crypto tech guys with me when every night we'd go out, and I was around when they first started that technology. So these are solid dudes, no shit on the X with us. So when I say he's not a SEAL, I'm just stating a fact. Oh, yeah. He was a complete stud. Right. Definitely belonged there, and he knew his shit really well.
Yeah, yeah. And what I was saying was, when I spoke to his dad Charles was the one that sort of brought me up to speed on Extortion 17, and then from there, and it was the timing of it, right after the raid, and Michael comes home in between the raid on the compound and his bird going down, and he's at his birthday party telling everybody, this is multiple sources, including his dad, confirming, I need to write my will. I'm going to write my will. And then he was just acting totally different. He goes back overseas, and he's shot down. And, there's tons of questions surrounding that. So I'll link also to that interview with Charles Strange. But the connectivity between the raid, the Extortion 17, and then Benghazi, was the one that really got me thinking in 2011, 2012, like, gosh, I knew the politicians were dirty and I knew they'd lie to us, but the things Hillary Clinton was saying, the things Susan Rice was saying, it was obviously bullshit. And I think everybody almost in America knew it, unless you were just a huge, Hillary fanboy or fangirl at the time. So there's a connectivity there, but a lot of people may not know exactly what we're talking about with Extortion 17. So I've pulled a 5-minute clip. It's not going to tell the whole story, but I think it's a timely little clip that says some things about the raid to the actual Extortion being shot down itself that I think will help people get up to speed. So I'm going to play that real quick, and then we'll go.
U.S. military have not disclosed which of its units killed bin Laden, but sources say an elite division of the Navy SEALs carried out the operation. The White House and the U.S. Defense Department never comment on its activities for fear of jeopardizing future missions.
The Secretary of Defense, Bob Gates, forged an agreement among senior Obama administration officials that no one would identify the group of Americans that took out bin Laden, because to do so would put a target on their backs. That lasted for about 48 hours.
Please sit down. Thank you. Let me briefly acknowledge tonight's distinguished honorees. Admiral Jim Stavridis is a real deal. He could tell you more about and understands the incredible, the phenomenal, the just almost unbelievable capacity of his Navy SEALs and what they did last Sunday.
Details are surfacing about that superhuman force that took down bin Laden, the Navy SEALs known as Team 6.
And on your side, Lori Crouch is here to explain the role of the U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6.
Tom, these black operatives who move with the highest level of classification, only small groups of people are in the know.
After the American Vice President, Joe Biden, confirmed the elite U.S. Navy's SEAL Team 6 carried out the mission killing bin Laden, there are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs, dead or alive, further jeopardizing security for the special operators and even that of their families.
Hamza bin Laden, son of former Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, can be heard issuing threats in a recording released by Al-Qaeda's media division. He vows to avenge his father's death, telling Americans that they will be held accountable for the decisions of their leaders.
August 6, 2011, Logar Province, Afghanistan. Members of SEAL Team 6 were stationed at a forward operating base called FOB Shank. It's 100 miles or so south of the capital of Kabul. They got a call in as a quick reactionary force to rescue a ranger squadron that was in trouble.
Extortion, Black 1, Black 2. Current LZ looks like it's still in the green zone.
This flight should have been 10 minutes from wheels up to wheels down, but it stalled in the air for some reason and sort of hung over the landing zone. We lost communication with it. We don't know what's going on inside that chopper.
All right, I got Extortion in sight. I saw a flash. You seen a flash?
Dude, I think they just got shot.
The Taliban is taking responsibility for shooting down a U.S. helicopter. More than 30 people were killed, and there are reports this morning that most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
The Taliban says its fighters shot down the helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Devastating news coming in this morning, particularly after the news the Navy SEALs were responsible for killing Osama bin Laden in May.
I got involved in part because as an ex-Navy JAG officer, I still stay abreast of military affairs. And in 2013, there had been this press conference that had taken place at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. It was about the shoot down of this chopper, Extortion 17. There were several family members who lost their sons there, and they've been trying to get answers on what had happened.
My son, right? My son, Michael, was fighting for his life.
I was told at the classified meeting it was not because of the rules of engagement. We didn't take out the men and fire the RPGs. It was because we didn't know where the shots came from. That crushed me.
Why was there no pre-assault fire? We were told as families that because pre-assault fire damages our efforts to win the hearts and minds of our enemy.
We're pleading with the American people to put the pressure on your congressmen and senators to make sure that that investigation does get started up and we do get some answers as to what was going on.
The parents were asking for the Congress to do some sort of meaningful investigation. February 27th of 2014, Congressman Chaffetz had an hour-and-a-half hearing before his House Oversight Governmental Subcommittee.
We are here today to have productive discussion. It is the intent of the subcommittee to obtain all the available information about the events following the crash of Extortion 17.
30 Americans on board a chopper warrant nothing more than a 90-minute investigation.
The committee has performed an extensive review of almost 2,000 pages of unclassified material related to Extortion 17.
You look at that 1,250-page report, you can see that certain documents had been secret marked out, confidential marked out. How did that happen? And I can tell you that after the information got out to a few of the family members, the military talked about trying to get it back.
So what he just said there, and I cut it off. I didn't want it to go too long, but he said someone wanted these things hidden. But before I ask any questions, I wanted to ask, because you guys have studied these things. Rob, you would be as close to it as, almost anyone I know. Do you know that's a documentary. That's from Fallen Angel, which you can get on Salem now if you ever wanted to watch it. Great film. Do you notice any errors though in that part so far? I mean, it could be wrong. A human made it. So, are there any errors that you saw that you would question?
Well, the errors initially are the big what led to the shoot down, because Extortion 17 had nothing to do with the bin Laden raid, period. And the way that Afghanistan works is everything came to a certain spot at a certain time, dealing with certain units. That a shoot down, obviously losing, I consider 31 Americans, because Bart the dog was an American also. And so many Gold Star families wanting answers. I get that, and I know they're all going to go ahead and talk, but the sad truth is the easiest explanation is what happened. What happened in the air, on the ground, is is what happened. The problem comes with afterwards when you do get the politicians involved and the general officers involved with an obvious cover up and with some mishandling of everything from bodies to the locals to the Afghans to their mullahs. A lot of bad stuff on the ramp ceremony in Bagram. And just, you know, if you tell the truth, you don't need to remember anything. You just keep telling the truth. But they get caught in little lies and they turn into bigger lies and bigger lies. And all of a sudden you get guys like Charlie Strange, who I love, Mike's dad. They just want answers and not getting them. And then the typical politicians, they continue to try to lie and lie and lie. And then it builds bigger and bigger and kind of takes away from what actually happened. I mean, to me, the biggest problem there is we stopped doing pre-assault fires because, like they said, with hearts and minds, and you're not going to win one anyway like that. And that's not what the military should be there for. The military should go in, crush people, and leave. Pre-assault fires are part of that. And if you're going into a place like Tangi Valley, that should happen, and it didn't, among other things. But the pre-assault fires didn't happen, and then the helo got shot down. We can get into the whole thing, but
sure.
The mission itself sucks, and it obviously the worst result imaginable. The cover up afterward is inexcusable.
Matt.
So you would know the answer more than anybody, and I don't know the answer to this question, but who was responsible for planning that mission and giving that the go ahead? Was that
it's going to be a JSOC mission, Joint Special Operations Command, but also you have to deal with what's called a battle space owner. And that's going to be a conventional Army, usually a colonel, I think, or maybe an 05, that runs the space. And the spaces are divided a lot like counties or in this case, provinces, stuff like that. They got to give the go ahead. And then what they do is they through intelligence, they, like anything else, you find a bad guy and then you try to find intel on who are they associated with and find those guys. You make like that spider web of who's going to do what. And part of the issue that especially in Afghanistan, because people get bored and they want it to be more important than it actually is. So they give guys like this Ish or whatever. I don't even care about his name. It was Objective Lefty Grove is what it was called. And they made him bigger than he was. Like they're saying this Taliban shadow governor. No, he's a piece of shit criminal. That's it. But because everything from people wanting a bigger mission, a bigger profile so I can get a better award, they try to make these people, these savages, more important than they actually are. And Lefty Grove was one of them. And you get other, like, say you're with a Ranger platoon, their new boss, the new officer wants to push and push and push. And we're going to go out every single night. Even if there's no missions, they can't handle it. And they want to do what's called a strike to develop. Let's just go out and shake things up. And I would always tell people, okay, what's the name of that guy? Look, well, we don't know. Okay, what are your kids' names? What's important? We don't need to go out on stupid missions. And they make a lot of, like,
guys, if you can hear me, let me get back to main cam real quick. So we did have a break right there in the feed. Not sure what happened, but they're going to come right back in. So please stay tuned. One thing I'll say in the meantime, we're going to get through Extortion 17. We're going to talk about Benghazi. Then we're going to open it up to audience questions. So in the live Q&A, I'm going to be monitoring that, especially when these guys are talking. I'm going to pick out select questions. And here's Rob now. I'm going to pick out some select questions, and we will take those at the end if we have time. So just be cognizant of that as we continue. So, Rob, you froze right midstream, dude. I apologize. I don't know what happened, but we got you back.
No, that's okay. That sort of thing happens when we get into this. Where did you lose? Where did I lose you?
You know, you might know, Matt.
You're talking about the Rangers going out night after night trying to create that practice to go out and you're like, don't do stupid missions. And that's kind of when it froze.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't mean to single out Rangers. I mean, we did it a lot. Marines do it a lot. And the problem is you get into this, well, we got to go out every night because we're working, but you also need to realize, and one of my favorite sayings is a bullet only needs to be right once. And a lot of these missions aren't worth it. I mean, I've gone through missions before where I have questions. Why are we walking through a potential IED field when there's nothing here? The same places like Wardak and Logar, like where this place is. And, like I said, I was there right after them, but a lot of people, they get this, they need to, people in charge, especially new officers who want to get their guys out there and, get muddied up. You should be asking the first sergeant what he thinks instead of what the lieutenant thinks. But, there's missions going on all the time, and there is an approval process, even to the point where it's getting delegated authority. You can go out on certain target packages, and it just happens every night. And I mean, to be honest, it's it's more boring than is exciting. So it's not uncommon to go out all the time. And I've been in a spot too where it's like, if we just, instead of doing that offset, let's just land on the X. No one's going to be there. We'll come home. We can have chow and watch Entourage. And then you go to the X, which is landing next to the house. And all of a sudden 10 dudes come out shooting at you in a gunfight because you didn't follow your standard operating procedures. Not saying this is the case because I wasn't on the mission, but it's just one of those things where it's not some big glorious mission and all of a sudden some band of Al-Qaeda guys are avenging bin Laden. They had nothing to do with each other. And the shitty thing is this was a lucky shot.
So let me ask you this next, because from what I've been told, and I'm trying to get a picture painted for people that don't know what a typical mission, like when you load into a Chinook and you're heading out to wherever you're heading to, what type of package goes out with you? Package meaning, is it TF-160 that's putting up together the Night Star, all that, what's going out with you? Blackhawks, Apaches, what's typically going out to protect you? Because a Chinook is not a very mobile, agile aircraft.
Well, it depends where you're working. In Afghanistan, the primary bird is going to be a Chinook because of the altitude, because they can handle the payload. We put fewer dudes in a Chinook in Afghanistan than we did in Iraq, but they get used all the time. And when we go with the package, we would generally we would take 247s, two Chinooks flown by TF-160. That's how we would roll. Rarely would we use Blackhawks in Afghanistan. In Iraq, we'd be one Chinook, 3 or 4 60s, whatever. But it all depended on the target. And like a target like this, the Rangers went out and SEAL Team 6 stayed behind, but the SEALs would be there as a quick reaction force. Sometimes when we go out, we would now Rangers didn't always take us with them. We would generally take Rangers with us. And we'd always have Rangers as a QRF or an IRF, immediate reaction force, behind. So on a package like this, the Rangers went, but SEALs were behind at the base on a standby. Like your gear's ready. You're not necessarily wearing it, but everything's sitting there. The birds are ready to go, and you have in this case, your 7 Afghan partnering units or whatever with you. And so you can jump if they need you. So Chinooks were pretty common. One of the issues, though, and again, it wasn't always TF-160, which is the finest pilots on the planet in the history of the world. These Army pilots are the best, but there's not that many of them. So, and they got spread thin because all of a sudden other units realized that TF-160 is so good, they want to use them too. So you'll see units that aren't quite necessary to have TF-160 start putting special operations something in front of their name. So they want, and you're over there 15, 20 years, everyone's using TF-160. Then you start to use different airframes, different pilots that might not be as good, shit like that. And, it's like, well, why can't we have TF-160? Well, this Army unit's using them. And it gets lost in the sauce just because of so many people want to work when they don't necessarily need to be. And it's like, is the squeeze worth the juice? Not all the time. And especially the longer the war went on, we'd see this a lot.
So with that being said, if we're force ranking mission priority, you would think a tier 1 unit heading out with to go back up or help out the Rangers that are out there, that would probably qualify for a TF-160. You would think. I mean, in my mind, that would
you would, but they weren't available. They weren't available. They weren't there.
Let me ask.
So does that?
Go ahead.
Let me just follow.
Yeah.
Does that then, as a leader or whoever the colonel planning the mission or whoever within the SEAL command that's working with them to talk about the stuff the SEALs would do, is that something that you would go, maybe this isn't a mission we should go on?
Yes,
as a group.
The way that we did it is we'd have usually 3 teams of about 7 dudes, each team with a team leader. And the reason we kept it at 3s, we had a thing we called the rule of 3s. That's because it's not a vote. It's more of a conversation. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And if 2 say no, then we're just not going. And that's just, obviously the military, if I give you an order, you're going, but we can talk about it. You have advisors and stuff like that. On this mission in particular, in their defense, because the Rangers went in first, they did a great job. They took the thing down. I think they grabbed 7 dudes. Some guys escaped, or we call them squirters. They're squirting. Then they see some more dudes squirting. And if I was one of the SEALs back at the base, and especially now when the gunfire starts, you get more excited. Like, yes, now I want to go. And if you see guys squirting, if I'm one of those SEALs, I'm saying, fuck yeah, get me on the bird. Let's go after those squirters. Right now it's a 10-minute flight. Let's do it. And that's, that is again going to be up to the troop commander, the troop chief, 3 team leaders. But on something like that, all 5 guys are saying, yeah, we're getting on the bird. And in this case too, just because it's such a narrow valley in there, what they said, and the word I got from, like, there were 2 dudes that lived that were back at the talk. They said that the first bird is the second bird is probably going to get shot down, but we can roll the dice and put everybody on one. They might not see us coming. And that's not necessarily reported very much, but people will say, well, why was everybody on one helicopter? Well, that's the reason why. And it's not a big conspiracy. It's because those 3 team leaders, the troop chief and the troop commander, said, what do you think? Okay, let's put them all on one. We'll all get on Extortion 17. Those pilots have already been there tonight. They flew the Rangers in. They know where they're going. We're going to get on this. We'll get out. We'll get in a fight. And it's different from planning a mission and doing the rock drill and doing the planning, blah, blah, to being there, watching it real time and saying, there's a gunfight right now. Let's go. There's a big difference. And it's obviously more exciting. And, even though I said there's a lot of missions you shouldn't go on, there are very few when gunfire is going on that you don't want to go to just because it's the nature of the beast. You're with your boys. Let's do this.
I knew that you guys could really rip each other with the SEAL teams. I didn't think you'd go so far as calling each other squirters.
No. Squirters were the bad guys.
I missed that part.
Hey, I'm not saying what happens in the team room. I'm just saying we refer to them as squirters running off the damn building.
That's better, dude. Okay. I heard
well,
that wrong.
What's funny is we had to manipulate the language too, because a squirter you consider shooting, but if he's running away, you can't shoot him. So we started calling them maneuverers.
That's tough. That's a mouthful.
That's a maneuver, and it's hard to say, so they don't even know what you said.
Well, here's my question, because if it is like you're saying, Rob, that there's no conspiracy here, they may have had to lie, they may have lied about little things, and that grew into something bigger. But at the end of the day, just a mission that went bad. I don't understand a few things. I'm just going to go down a little list of bullet points I made as you were talking. So, one, you've got retired Air Force Captain Joni Marquez, who was brought in to provide air cover, right? And she actually would consider joining us tonight, but then last minute said she had to work, so she couldn't do it.
She would be a great one to talk to.
Yeah. She's going to come one-on-one for a show in the near future. But, she was told, stand down, don't help, multiple times. And she was watching them. It wasn't like the thing got shot and blew up in the air. Yes, there was some fire, but that thing got shot, went down. She said she saw a firefight on the ground, and she wanted to help, in whatever way she could.
I would love to talk to her about that. And I'm not calling her out. I wasn't there. She was there. I'm totally familiar with the ROEs asking permission, getting denied. And that's complete bullshit. The same thing with pre-assault fires. I've seen it before myself. I've seen brand new Army specialists shoot a dude with a minigun that was as close to being underneath the rotors, so close, like the kid didn't even know how to handle it. His first kill was with a minigun, and the reason the guy was that close is because they wouldn't give him pre-assault fires. That bird could have got shot down. That was just one night where some poor kid at the time, but lucky dude now, his first kills with a fucking minigun at 7 feet. That's a hell of a kill. That guy just vanishes. But with Joni, the Apaches were looking for fire. The C-130s wanted to fire. They would not. It took an act of God to get. To when you call for fire to get it. I've been in positions where I've seen people from the talk 200 miles away say, when we're requesting fire in a cave, say, we're not saying there are women and children in that cave. We're just saying we can't prove there are not. And that's when you get these pencil pushing pussies out there who are trying to run a war with a suit and tie on, which is not the way you do it. And so I would agree with her. Yeah. And she probably asked for fire. She couldn't get fire afterwards. As far as the fight, now the feed that I saw, and I was actually in North Carolina at JSOC when this went down. What we saw right afterwards was you could see that we thought guys were potentially taking cover to shoot because it looked like they were prone, but because of the way they were positioned on the back of the helicopter, they got thrown out and they died on it. Well, what they told us is they died within a fraction of a second just because of the incredible force of the back rotor getting shot off of a 47. Because the way the two blades work, they're spinning opposite directions to keep them stable. Once one left, it spun them so fast, people died like that. And the dudes that were on the ramp, which would be the snipers and the CT guy, they're going to get thrown out. And then, so they fall, 50 to 100 feet. They're dead on the ground. The reason they look prone,
because just so I don't put words in Joni's mouth, and I don't want to create drama here that doesn't necessarily need to be between you and her if you talk. So Joni, she might have said, because I don't have the transcript in front of me, that there were fighters on the ground. That could have meant enemy fighters. I just remember seeing fighters on the ground. Yeah. Now, I know Charles believes that there were. Go ahead.
She was a lot closer to it than I was. And if she was here talking, I'd shut the hell up and let her talk, because she knows she was there. Just what we saw, and again, that's me turning an intel guy, because I'm just watching from an ISR feed. They got thrown and they were prone because they were dead, and they were laying there because we were hoping they would shoot too, but they weren't. They were just dead because they got thrown out. And those 3 or 4 bodies were the ones that were intact. The rest of them, there was nothing left. Okay. And I don't even want to get into what the after action report said about their bodies.
So what I hear so far is major fuck ups, but not conspiracy. But then you move on to things like the black box. That now, I don't know what, it's not a military tribunal, but some kind of investigation. You could see the officers that were all sitting there in that little video clip that I showed. And I didn't show this part, but one of them says, like, was there a black box? And one of the officers says, no, there was not.
Here's the thing. Here's where a lot of the problems probably started, because you had some jackass say, yeah, the black box, there was a flash flood and it washed away. Okay. First of all, that's a nonsense statement. The problem with that, however, is the person saying that doesn't know what he's talking about, because the CH-47 Delta does not have a flight or voice recorder. It doesn't have one. It has an engine data only, so that maintenance can look at it later. So there is no black box, as far as I know, not being a pilot. So I'm going to caveat that with me not being an expert on the Chinooks, but there wasn't a flight or voice.
This goes back to a question early on that I meant to ask you. I'll ask it now because it makes sense. Why are we using helicopters from the Forrest Gump era? Like, I mean, like what from, like what's the deal? And surely they upgrade these things with years. I mean, even if the shell is old, you would think this is our most precious and powerful resource are the SEAL teams. Why aren't we protecting them with everything we've got?
I flew in nothing but 47s in Afghanistan. I've never been in a Black Hawk in Afghanistan. I'm telling you that the altitudes we're going up to, I mean, we're talking, you go up to 10, 12,000 feet. You need to be in a Chinook. The Black Hawk's not going to make it up there. We use them. They upgraded them. You know that a Chinook will outrun a Black Hawk. Like, they're the fastest ones.
I have no idea.
Yeah, they're fast as shit, and they fly. And generally, in my experience, the most senior pilots, like flight lead, would be flying the 47s. Little birds are the coolest, but they're not flying that high. Chinooks are like Al Mack. If you haven't read Al Mack's book, Razor 03, that's a guy you got to read, because that's the Forrest Gump of Army aviation. That dude was everywhere. He flew. He was one of the first guys to fly in the horse soldiers. He was flying the bird Neil fell out of. He saved the bird. He's the one that came up with the keep flying the helicopter even though it's going down. Al Mack's been everywhere. I mean, he was. I got stories, but they're better when he tells them.
All right. Well, let me run through my bullet points.
I have a shirt here in my studio. He was so cool. We made a shirt that says, "I know Al Mack."
Dude, you are like the baseball card memorabilia guy, except yours is like special team stuff with like signatures. And I got this hatchet. I got this thing. All right. So we got the black box, the problem. We got Tomahawk. Sorry. We got Joni Marquez. There's a problem. We've got the cremated bodies. It's a problem. That was one that Charles Strange, that's what really hurt him. And we can get into that in a minute. You've got, and then the photos that came out later that showed that his son didn't need to be cremated, but yet they did it anyway. I mean, these are Gold Star parents. What are we doing? Then you mentioned the ramp ceremony. There's problems there. And lastly, who was actually on extortion? There's a lot of issues there as well. But those are my high level bullet points. Matt, let's give you a second, and then Rob can respond.
Well, I think to the point of the cremation and where, the cover up began is when you realize it wasn't shot with an RPG, it was shot with a Stinger missile. And when you have that as the fact, and that's where we'll talk about this when we get into Benghazi, where there's not necessarily a direct link, but a probable link between gun sales in Libya that made their way into Afghanistan, and prior to Benghazi even happening, it had been happening for a while, and that part of those gun sales ended up in the Taliban's hands, and that the Stinger missile, there's more than enough evidence out there from people in the know that I've spoken to that can confirm that it was a Stinger missile, and if it was a Stinger missile, more than likely the chemicals that would come from an exploded Stinger missile ordnance would be found in regular non-burnt up bodies if they ever did DNA or any type of testing on the body. So the best way to get rid of any type of evidence is to destroy it. And for me, if we're looking at a conspiracy and why cover something up as this, because to me, again, and I go back to everything that we've talked about thus far, and we'll say moving forward forever, is that even if something went wrong, it doesn't change the heroicism of the people that went out and did it.
Right.
If you tell the truth and you learn from it. And if more and more people will continue to die, if we continue to treat things like this as redheaded stepchildren, we don't want anybody to see. And the realities are is that there are plenty more people that will go to that gunfight, like Rob talked about, because they heard the gunshots are going and they want to go, and that's what they're for. And fuck it, let's get on the bird. And if the mission's a bad mission and the intel's bad, and you don't have the proper pilots or the proper package, you're putting yourself at risk. And for me, I understand there's realities of battle and war, but if we're going to continue to have cover-ups when mass amounts of young men and women who are serving our country bravely die and then lie to the parents so they have no closure, that's when all of this never gets cleared up, and there's never going to be trust. There's never going to be anybody that goes, God bless the Navy SEALs, or God bless our United States of America, God bless whatever fucking entities in charge of our government. We're never going to have that again until we get to the point where we can own our shit and be willing to say, yeah, that didn't happen that way, or yes, it happened that way, and we're very sorry that it did, but your son or daughter was very brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my if we wanted to be more honest, I think this is we got to get politicians out of it. That's a big part of the thing, because there's no doubt in my mind we're doing some shady gun running in Libya. That's why that whole thing was going down. I think it was mainly to arm the moderates in Syria because we want to fight ISIS, whatever bullshit that was. I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure, but I don't think a Stinger is going to hit a helicopter 200 yards. I think it's too close. I think they fired 3 RPGs at him. One was lucky hit because it hit the blade. It didn't hit the engine. Again, wasn't there. That's what I'm saying. But I think it all, because of what's going on with politicians in Libya and because of the Bin Laden raid being so close to Extortion 1-7, it's very convenient to wrap up a bunch of shit with the fallen angel. And I think that the guns out of Libya got to be a reason for the cover up after. I just don't think there's a conspiracy before. I've been to the Tangi Valley a bunch of times, even after this, very small valley, but these cavemen if they had stingers, we're going to find them. And we didn't find them. There was no traces of them. There was no intel, human, rumen, SIGINT, anything coming from Pakistan, which they would come from, into the Tangi Valley. I just don't think they were there. I've seen RPGs get shot at helicopters I was in. It's scary as shit, and they just zip past you sometimes. Like I said, though, that need to be right one time, and that's the shitty thing. As far as the cremating the bodies that's a fucking hard stop. As far as honesty, that's complete bullshit, because you can tell from the ISR feed that there were bodies intact. The guys that didn't make it out of the bird were not. Again, I don't want to get into that, but cremating everyone is that's bad from everything ethics to.
Well, I'll speak to it real quick, Rob. So I kind of reread the chapter. It's the first chapter of Charles Strange's book called Relentless, about his son. Very good book, worth reading. It's small.
Yes.
That first chapter, he talks about when he got to see the actual photos, he's like, Michael, his face was okay. His body was okay. His ankle was almost torn off. Like he was almost lost a foot. And there were, but he wasn't like burned up. He's like, we could have done an open casket even. So, yes. I mean, it's just, they were obviously, they could have done it. And the big question becomes why. It's not like at a certain point, like it's not another mistake. It's not another error. They're trying to rid evidence for some reason.
Oh yeah. After the bird went down, that's when the cover up started. This is a normal mission up until then. Everything from when people say too, well, we didn't hear about SEAL Team 6 till after the Bin Laden raid. It's like, really? Well, do a little research. 2009, when we rescued Richard Phillips, SEAL Team 6 did it. Look at 1980. Look at Rogue Warrior, Richard Marcinko, SEAL Team 6. SEAL Team 6 has been out there. It's convenient to wrap everything up because people like to sit around like we're doing right now and talk about, well, what if this is connected to this? And I'm going to tell you from experience, most shit's not that exciting. And a lot of the enemy's not that smart.
But in this case, now, obviously the Captain Phillips thing, as cool as it is, I know there was a movie made, it's not as high profile as the Bin Laden raid. And just like that little documentary clip showed, and I remember I said, did you see any errors in this? You've got, of all people, Joe Biden, the vice president. He's the one that, so what people didn't know, they knew about SEAL Team 6, that they existed. Yeah. They didn't know that that was the actual team that did the raid. And then Biden comes out. They
knew it that night when we got back to Bagram on May 2nd. We went in to shower, get some pizza and whiskey, even though you can't drink in Afghanistan. And then we went right to the computers, and all over everything was SEAL Team 6, SEAL Team 6. And that's before Biden confirmed it 2 days later, but he did say it that night also, because Joe's been known, I don't know if you've noticed, to have a gaffe every now and then.
Of course. Yeah. So he could make errors, and obviously, but and this is a conversation for you and Charles, I think, Rob, maybe behind the scenes. Why did Michael Strange come home and tell his dad at the birthday party, I need to write my will? And also in the book, he confirmed there were others that also did it as well. They found one of them on a piece of paper frozen in the guy's freezer before he went back over and was on Extortion 17. Those are verifiable things, by these parents. And they wouldn't just make that up,
Well, no, they wouldn't make it up too. Also, though, the seasoned Navy SEALs that were there, they also had wills. They weren't as excited as guys that weren't SEALs working with SEAL Team 6. This was new to a lot of guys. They're excited. Look, I'm drawing a will. I'm going into danger. I'm going to war. Maybe they were just excited. Like Lou Langlis, Tom Rasleff, Heath Robinson, Kevin Houston, Brian Bill, Rob Reeves, Chris Campbell, Aaron Vaughn. They all had wills too. And I one of my regrets in life, I went to Robert J. Reeves' house right before he left, and he asked me if I wanted a glass of wine. I said, no, I'm not drinking tonight for some reason. My regret is I didn't have it with him because he died on that helicopter too. Maybe it's just they went home and they want to sound cool. I don't know. But having a will, having your shit in order, going to the fucking dentist are all normal before you go on deployment. Making sure you have no cavities, making sure every one of your pages of your service record are in order. It's just, that's what you do. And what you say over beers at a party, I can't help. I don't know. But I guarantee goddamn you, they didn't get a brief saying, hey, they just killed bin Laden, so be ready there. We're going on a super secret mission. No, they're going back to Fob Shank. They're going to go out every night and strike to develop. And that's it.
Yeah. I just think that you and Charles need to have that conversation, because
I love Charlie. I've seen him a bunch, and I will for sure. I'm going to give him a call. I'll give him a call tomorrow.
Yeah, give him a call, because his words to me were, and in the book he says that his son Michael was saying to him, Dad, you're not going to believe what's going on in this country, and that was kind of the.
Okay, what's going on? I mean, the only thing to be surprised,
again, that's a conversation between you and him.
About is, why aren't we leaving now? Bin Laden's dead. He was in Pakistan. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Right. Okay. I think that's a conversation for you and him, because that.
I will too, and I'm not trying to talk shit at all too. And Charlie's done a hell of a lot more research on this than I have. I mean, his book's incredible. He's been in. I mean, he knows more about the cover up than I definitely do. The issue is, with my experience in combat over there, we are not fighting a complex enemy, and I'm talking about dudes that they can't count to 5. They don't know what it means, but they know all 5 of their brothers' names. They don't know what time is. They don't have a concept of, I had a dude when I got mad at my cook one time in Afghanistan, and I said, Idris, in 200 years, my country put a man on the moon, allegedly, and brought him back. We could surround Afghanistan 10,000 years. You wouldn't have invented a television. And his answer to me was, Mr. Rob, you're so stupid. You can't put a man on the moon because it's this big. Like, no, that's an argument.
But yeah, now the whole life he's blowing up on, does Rob O'Neill not believe the moon landing? Thanks a lot, dude.
I said allegedly, and that brings up our next episode, number 4. We talk about that. I wasn't there either.
Non-military conspiracies. Now I forgot completely what I was going to ask you, Matt. What you got?
I mean, you may not believe it was a Stinger missile. I have multiple sources, that one within the agency and one who was involved with the teams, who confirmed that it was a Stinger missile.
Okay.
Again, I didn't see it. I'm reporting that
I didn't either. I wasn't there.
It would lend to the understanding, because we still haven't. The elephant in the room is why. Why cremate the bodies? Why cover something up? What is the need to cover something up?
What is the cover up, Rob? I mean, you keep saying cover up, but then it's a boring mission.
Well, for some reason, the cover up is someone's covering their ass. Why did we lose so many great people? What was this mission all about? Are they trying to make it more important than it was, or trying to make it less important than? And I can't speak to that. And if someone from the agency knows there was a stinger, cool. I'm just saying I didn't see one. Turbine 3-3, different story. I think those were 2 stingers. This one I think was RPGs. Again, I can't confirm it, but also I haven't seen a shred of evidence.
Right. And I get that. And my only argument is that if there is a why, and there has to be a why watch Joe Price's hands in his body? Why do those things if there isn't a reason to do so? There isn't any amount of argument to ineptness or lack of care or any of those things. It doesn't hold water. But even if it's 3 not survivors, but 3 SEALs or soldiers or airmen, whoever was the 3 that weren't completely destroyed and burned up, why would you need to then not give their families the ability to choose the method of burial and the method of which they want to be done? And
I don't know.
Absent all 30 of them requesting to be cremated in their will, which I don't have 30 wills to look at, but I would argue that probably is improbable. That there would have to be a overwhelming reason to take the risk of scrutiny that is much less than the truth being revealed. That's because the scrutiny is gigantic. You piss off a bunch of families who want to know what the hell happened to their kid. That's nothing. You saw what happened in Virginia with a bunch of moms who thought their kids were getting fucked with. They elected a Republican governor in a blue state. You get enough parents pissed off, change happens.
Yes. Yeah, that's a fair point too. Why would they? I honestly don't have an answer. Why would they cremate everybody? That's a damn good question, and that's worth investigating. Could be because like I said, that some guys got thrown from the bird; they were fully intact.
Rob, there's a question I've been wanting to ask you. I thought about asking you before the interview, and since you brought up the moon landing thing, and since you brought, but the fact that you talked about how unsophisticated the enemy is, this is a big 10,000 foot level question, and only three answers are going to suffice for me: yes, no, or no comment. All right.
Okay.
All right. It's a very unsophisticated enemy. They were able to hide this unsophisticated enemy that doesn't have any concept of time, and they can't do what we can do at any level. Yet we could not locate bin Laden for 10 years. Do you believe that our military did not know where he was truly, whether it's a military, an agency, or politicians? I mean, do you really believe that it was an honest search by the people at the very top?
Yeah, at first, Delta had him at Tora Bora. That should have been the end of it. Unfortunately, again, we get officers and politicians involved. Let's just negotiate with the locals. They'll hand him over. We can get him alive. Didn't work. And then we just, for some reason, we decided to, I know we're big on saying we will track you down anywhere. No, not in this case. We'll just stop at the eastern border of Afghanistan. And that's what we did. And he went into Pakistan. And I didn't think they had a lock on him forever until 3 weeks before the mission. And the agency told us they've been looking at him. So I would have told you he's a ghost. I even would make it a joke as a battlefield interrogator. I would, like, even in Iraq, like I'm the guy in the house interrogating right away. And I would be like, who's the guy in the house? Who's the man in the house? Whose weapon is this? Where's Osama bin Laden? And like, I've seen terrorists laugh at me like, I don't fucking know. He's a ghost, like literally laughing about that shit. So I would have told you no, but there are some people in back rooms in certain places that are tracking people. So I think that the agency knew where he was for a long time. It's a question of how to get him, because generally working inside of Pakistan, you're going to need to get Pakistani help. And once you tell anyone in Pakistan you're coming after one of the bin Ladens, he's gone.
Do you not lend any credibility to the idea of Osama bin Laden being an asset that keeps, as long as we can't find him, we get to engage in a war that is helping the war machine and all the money that's made from that, along with other things that, Matt, you've talked about from time to time with the gun running and the opium fields and all that stuff? Like, do you not think it was actually a positive thing for enough powerful people to keep the war going by not finding him? So it was just a game?
Well, I mean, now it's 2024. I'd believe anything. After the COVID lockdown, I will believe anything. So if people can get rich off war, I can see if I got Dick Cheney on speed dial. I'm sure he made a bunch of money in Iraq. But yeah, there are people that have interest in keeping wars going. As far as the drugs and shit, I never considered that we're selling them back here until now. It's like, man, maybe we were. I'm not saying we were, but we might have been. There's a hell of a lot of money in making missiles and shooting missiles. I mean, even right now, who's to say that we're not doing a bunch of stuff with the Iran proxy, so we take our eyes off the money laundering going on in Ukraine? There's a lot of bad shit, and this is why cover-ups happen. The good guys, the good men and women on the ground aren't involved in the conspiracies. It's the fuck faces in the Beltway that are.
Yes. Last question of, just your personal opinion. This isn't a statement of fact. It's just kind of where you're leaning. Do you think that our CIA, Donald Rumsfeld, George Bush, or any of the high-level people that we would all know about, do you think any of them had foreknowledge of the World Trade Centers going down, or that the Pentagon would be hit?
I'd say no, but again, 2024, if someone showed me proof, I'd be like, I'll be damned.
And I think the key here, Rob, and for all the listeners, is no matter what you said to that, and even if it was true, that does not take away from the heroism and the brotherhood of anybody that's in the armed forces. Because I think a lot of people think, oh gosh, like it means it's all a big lie, and it means that everything we've ever done is awful, and that we can't be the good. There's a lot of good guys out there fighting, but they don't know maybe what's happening at the top that's causing them to be there. So I want to create that separation.
No, I think that's true too. And a point that I make too, because we're talking about the 10,000, 30,000 foot level, when you get down into it, when I was fighting, I never went into a room because I'm going to defend George W. Bush. I'm fighting for the guy next to me. I'm fighting for the woman next to me. That's it. And that's how personal it gets. And the men and women on the ground, I don't give a shit which unit. They're great people. But I mean, as far as like, did Bush or Rumsfeld know about this or the Pentagon? I think the simple way to figure that out is just find one dude from Skull and Bones and interview him.
Well, that would be Bush or
John Kerry
or John Kerry. Interesting. They ran against each other. So you are of the belief that Building 7, the plane, came down due to the heat of the office fires that were created from sparks that flew from the trade centers.
I mean, I don't know. And I'm not an engineer. I know we were told that. I know that 2 large towers falling like that, just what it's going to do to the infrastructure of Lower Manhattan. It looks shady as shit to me. I'll tell you that right now. It looks like a controlled demolition. But working as close as I have with the government, I highly doubt that we don't even have people good enough to go in there and put that much demolition, that many explosives and det cord into a building without one of the Karen secretaries noticing over her lunch break. So I mean, we're not as good as we think we are either. And I don't think you're going to get away with that shit. But having said that, you watch the feed, that's close controlled.
Yeah. And this is a sidebar conversation. I'll send you a video or two to watch, Rob, that I want you and I to have a conversation about how they could have wired the buildings for demolition without the eyes on it. So I'll send you that later. It's not something we got to talk about now.
Hey, like I said, after COVID, man, I'll listen to anything.
Yeah. I'm not one of those hologram people. It's like, it's Project Bluebeam. There were no planes. I'm not that guy, just so you know.
I know. And that's what we're saying earlier. You can have a conversation. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I'm telling, if I wasn't there, I'm just telling you what I've been told or what I think. And I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll tell you I am.
Well, I'll tell you this, as a guy that on 9/12 put in his application to be an air marshal, I can promise you that my belief on 9/12 is way different than what my belief is today. And the things that I was privy to back on 9/12 was retrospectively distractionary noise. The things they let you listen to, the audio tape of Let's Roll from the inside the black box, like that kind of stuff that they had us listen to in training, got you all fired the fuck up. Let's go kill terrorists. I get it. I understand the whole mechanism behind how they got us to be so all in and want to do that job. Years later, do I believe what I was told or what I saw happen the way it happened? No. I am 100% confident in the fact that there is a level of government that we don't give enough credit to that is so sophisticated and so capable and so devious and so collectively together that there is very little that can be done to infiltrate that or expose it in its truest form. However, I will say that there are branches off of that are less organized and less controlled and less concise that have leaks and cracks. And, we can get into this later, but part of my, obviously I've said this publicly about the brand of the SEALs and how, there is parts of our executive branch, there's part of our judicial branch, our Congress, who are part of this, whether it's the big government, the military complex, the whatever you want to call it, that is the deep state, but they're not the deep state that we think the deep state is. Deep state is the people we don't have any fucking clue who they are, who are really organized.
Yeah,
These are the people that are tangentially part of the deep state, who are the face, who we believe is the deep state, but they're not, who have the ability to execute on things, but not in a way that is so impenetrable to the outside world. And I believe there are, within the CIA, there are fractions of that below the super high level people, SEALs, executive branch, Delta, Army, doesn't matter. I believe it's everywhere. And the patterns by which they conduct themselves are the same. If you look at COVID, the way they did COVID is the same way they did HIV. The same way they did HIV is the same way they did crack. The same way they did crack, the same way they did the nuclear war hype over Russia and Soviet Union. It's the same pattern of fear mongering and scare tactics to get you to believe something is what it isn't. And I believe that there is, and I think from when it comes to your group, Rob, the Navy SEALs that you've served, that Joe Price was a hero to me, and he was a commander of one of the teams. So he was upper echelon, but he wasn't part of what I believe to be the brand, so to speak. And there is a top-down effect to that. And I believe there is a control mechanism by which they use to get people to do things and say things and react to things and put themselves out on things.
Just
and
real
I think
quickly,
that is
Matt,
where
quickly, Matt, and I don't mean to cut you off, but a lot of people are not going to know what you mean when you say he wasn't part of the brand. Could you just say real quick what that means for him not to be a part of the brand, yet he was a commander of one of the teams? Because that may not make sense to people.
The brand is a term that is used for the what is put out as far as what the Navy SEAL is, what the Navy SEAL brand is. It's the Chris Kyles, the Mark Luttrells, the Rob O'Neills, the heroes who are out there as the face and in the movies, in the books, in all that stuff. And then you have the lower level of guys who are, were SEALs who did stuff too, and are out there doing the speaking circuit, or have books out, or have private companies in training or leadership, or whatever the case might be. And then there are the guys that are the grunt guys that are out there doing the day-to-day work, who aren't getting any accolades or aren't out in the front on anything, who may be asked to do things that they don't want to do, but get caught up in something they didn't know they're getting caught up in. Next thing you know, they have to do it because that's their choice. They have to either be part of the team or not be part of the team. And Joe Price was one of the guys that simply kept himself out of that for as much as I can tell, and from everything that's ever been told to me from his time in the SEALs, and outside of me just being his friend, his career in the SEALs has been exemplary in the fact that he was the guy that never compromised his ethics, never compromised who he was. And I don't know if he was the norm or the exception, but I can tell you that he was not part of whatever the brand is. And for me, and I've said this publicly, and I again, Rob and I may not agree on the details of what happened in May of 2011, but I can tell you that my goal is to make sure that if there is a brand, and that brand does exist in the way that I believe it exists, that if it takes me kicking in some doors and pulling on some strings and rattling some cages to get Joe Price the justice he deserves, then fuck it, I will do that. There isn't a single person none of this is personal to me with Rob or anyone else that I may have to have a conversation with later on. And I can respect for 99.9% of what they did, but we may disagree on something that they did that for me is causing a problem. Because at the end of the day, my belief is this: with all of the coverage, whether it's Extortion 13, or Extortion 17, or Benghazi, or Job, or Roberts Ridge, or Melgar, or any of these other instances that have happened, those are the things they're trying to push under. They're trying to keep it as quiet as possible. And the way you keep things quiet is you create the distraction. Whether it's, we're talking about it right now. The distraction could be Iran with the Houthis, right? That may just be the distraction to something that's completely different than what's actually happening. And they put people out like Wilnick with Jocko, with Marcus, with Chris Kyle when he was alive. And they create these environments where there's this hero worshiping, whether it's real, justified or not. There is a hero worshiping complex that comes along with the American people who look at a Jocko or look at you or look at Marcus Luttrell and go, man, look at those motherfuckers. Hoorah, America. Right. And then all of a sudden we're all distracted because we're watching the millions of dollars that the Navy pumps into these projects for movies or books or TV specials or whatever case might be. And now we have nobody paying attention to all the fucking shit that's going on the lower level corrupts. And it creates this problem for me in that I can't penetrate any of it because all I want is Job's poor little old Job, who didn't get a blip on the fucking TV when he was killed. He's not going to get a blip on the fucking TV now because there's no airspace left. They control the fucking, the narrative is the media controls everything that's put out. No one's going to allow for that to be broken open for Joe Price's story to get out unless cages get rattled at the upper echelons. And that's really the only thing I care about. I don't give a shit if it's McCraven, Szymanski, I could give a shit. Who needs to get told? I already know Szymanski's been listening to these shows. I'm well aware. I've been told. So it doesn't matter to me which door gets kicked. I have to do this because I made a promise to a man that's dying and a sister who's grieving. And that's really the only thing that matters at the end of the day. Is I don't want to have on my tombstone that I didn't give it everything I had to try to solve a complex, extremely complex problem without really any support system whatsoever.
Well, I want to thank you, Matt.
Sorry.
That was good. I want to respect you guys' time. We talked about a little bit of Q&A. I mean, Rob, do you have anything you want to?
No, Matt's point was seriously spot on. That's a really good way to look at things too, with the distractions too. That makes a lot of sense. And even right before that, when they don't want you to see something, it's like we're two of the most secure buildings in the world with the Pentagon and the White House. No footage of a plane hitting the Pentagon, and we can't figure out who put the cocaine in the goddamn thing. So they get cameras everywhere, but nobody wants to see it, and they're going to distract you with something else. So very, very interesting points. No, like I don't think we have time to do Benghazi tonight, but
no,
I think
we don't.
They're linked into this somehow with a cover up that I'd like to get into. Just my thing with extortion again is just. I mean, everyone in the bird, everyone on the ground, everyone doing the right thing was doing the right thing too. And I just wanted to, get that out there. I knew most of the guys on there, and nothing but love for them and the Gold Star families, and Charlie Strange, who's been the tip of the spear for this entire thing too. Nothing but love for Charlie. But we got to get into Benghazi next time, but we should certainly.
And I can only imagine how frustrated he is. So the frustration level as I'm not a parent. I don't have skin in the game. So, Charlie Strange has skin in the game at a level that I can't even fathom.
No, I can't either.
You guys have time for 2 questions? And then
sure.
We'll take off here.
Yep.
All right. So first, this person writes, not a question, more of a statement. They obviously disagree on some topics, but they're remaining professional. I appreciate that. Very cool. All right.
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah. So Rob, I'm gonna ask it just because somebody put it out there, and I think it's a good one.
Sure.
I know you said don't mention names, but we mentioned it in the last show. Does Rob have proof from Red that Rob is indeed the shooter? That's question number 1. Or could he get that proof from Red? I'm
not going to talk about anybody on the mission. I'm not going to talk about aliases. I'm not going to talk about nicknames or anything like that. I just kind of wish they would release the pictures of Bin Laden just for the hell of it. They're there, and I've actually had congressmen tell me that when they went to the agency, the pictures are kept in a file cabinet that's not not locked. Like,
but how would that wouldn't prove who the shooter was? That would just it would get away from part of it as far as body double or is he even dead type bullshit. And that's because there's so many different conspiracies. As far as the other stuff, it's just out there. And if I wish everybody that was on the ground will tell their story. There's going to be 23 different stories on the ground, and then different ones with the pilots and the air crew and the other guys that came in on the other Chinook, I might add, that came in to get us out when SEAL Team 6 and the Army rescued SEAL Team 6. I'd love to hear their stories. What I've said about the Bin Laden raid is that's pretty much what happened. And
I mean, that's all there is to it. I can't speak for other guys, what they did. I mean, my story has never changed, and I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not going to beg for you to believe me. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, no, thank you. Matt, this question's for you. What's next for Matt after this? What are your plans to keep pushing for justice with Job?
I've been invited on a bunch of podcasts, which I'm going to go on. At this point, now it's just about eyes and ears. And, I need to get as many people asking questions and as many versions of my efforts being put in front of people who may not want me talking, listening to what I'm saying, and having to make a tough choice on whether or not they believe I have the capability and the knowledge to unravel some things that could be damaging. And is it worth it to risk me doing that? Because all I really want is Job's case reopened, and or give me all the evidence from the crime scene. Give me the GSR, give me the DNA, give me the photos, give me the ballistics, give me everything I need to make a conclusive decision based on all of the evidence. And then Matt Cubbler just goes back to being retired.
Is there an element
necessarily
here, Matt,
have any other?
Is there an element here, Matt, though, of kind of like the Canadian truckers or the French, farmers, where they're pissed off. They know they're being done wrong. They're spraying horse shit on the buildings of the capitals and stuff like that. And it's disturbing. Like, so you going on tons of podcasts, you're creating, the noise, and it might bother them that you're asking these questions, especially if they've got something to hide. But does that actually lead to them? I mean, what's going to make them have to make a move?
I mean, there's just information that I have that, I don't want to ever say people's names. That's not my goal. My goal is not to out anybody or create a disturbance in their force, right? That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is get somebody who goes, okay, clearly he has somebody on the inside who's giving him information. I'm not an insider. I'm just a reporter. I'm just a guy delivering information. But apparently I'm the only person that gives a shit about Joe Price. So all I want to do is, outside of his family, is get that solved. And he's not the Pope. He was Joe Price from Pottstown, Pennsylvania, commander of SEAL Team 4, and some weird shit happened in his bunk that night. And I want to know what that is. And I need to have that answer. And that answer is not what they're telling me. And that's not going to fly. That's whatever it takes to get that answer, I will do.
Yeah, your story on Job, and looking at the comments and people DMing me about this stuff, of all the things we've talked about, there's disagreements from the people that have watched on every single thing on what to believe. But on that one, on Job, and after they saw the picture I've not heard anyone say that the official story is the right one. They all are, thinking that there needs to be a real investigation done. Rob, do you have 5 minutes? There's a good question for you here.
Yeah, I got 5 minutes.
Okay.
Can I add one thing real quick? Robert. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to add one thing. I know what's going to be said about me. I'm well aware that someone's going to come out and say, Matt Cubbler has been a cop for 30 years, but he's been three of his departments were small departments in Pennsylvania. He wasn't NYPD or LAPD or some fucking other PD, that he doesn't have the experience or the whatever, the chops to make this decision, this type of investigation. He's hitting out of his weight class. And I will just tell anybody that has that to say that if you can refute a single fucking thing that I've said, if you, whatever department, gold shield you got from whatever big city police department or federal agency, if you have the ability to refute a single thing I said, I will eat my words and tell you I was wrong. But I know for a fact everything I said is 100% factual. So whatever the slinging of mud that's going to come, which has already started, I'm okay with that. But just know that unless you're going to come at me with facts, I don't give a fuck what your opinion is.
Well said. Well said, sir.
Yeah, very well said once again.
Rob, what is your take on McCraven? That's the whole question from Shipmate 69. What's Rob's take on Vice Admiral McCraven?
Well, first of all, Shipmate 69, you're the reason I couldn't get Shipmate 69 as my handle. That's awesome. Bill McCraven is one of the top 3 finest officers I've ever worked with, the best admiral I've ever worked for. He's been a solid dude every time I met him. He was the one that sold the mission. He's the one that picked the mission. He's the one that like everything up to the speech that we necessarily didn't need to get as a team of SEAL Team 6 guys. But it was after he gave us the speech, like, sir, you were born to tell us that before we went in. Not even rah, just awesome. And after the fact, even down to the make your bed speech that he gave at University of Texas. That's just the guy he is. Looks, sounds, talks like an admiral. I can talk for another 10 minutes about how awesome that dude is. Everything about him is incredible. Great leader, great shooter, great. Like the only time he ever got hurt was skydiving. So maybe I can give him a few pointers on canopy work. That's about it.
What do you think about his support for Joe Biden's administration? I mean, he said Trump was a danger to the country. I mean, that you got to everything that goes along right now with Biden's administration, open borders, transgender ABCD mafia push. I mean, it's insane, but he's supporting that guy. I can't square those two things.
You know what? I'm going to ask him next time I talk to him why that is. I've found that when you get to the flag officer level, they have a tendency to lean to the left, and I don't know why, because he's not going into politics. He's not working in DC or anything like that. A lot of senior officers do that. I don't know if it's because he supported President Obama and he just can't go back. I know he doesn't like Donald Trump. That's more of a question for Admiral McCraven. I don't have an answer. I wish I could talk sense into him, but just for the people watching too, there is a clip that I have where he was on with Jake Tapper, and he was talking about the admiral in charge of the mission said, "Oh, that's Rob O'Neill, the guy that killed Osama bin Laden. He's a Trump guy." Just for the record.
Very good. Well,
guys, he gave me a discount.
Very nice.
Hey, but can I know it's your podcast. Can I make a statement about you, Jay?
Go for it, brother.
I love how it says podcaster, American hero. That's fucking awesome.
Dude, I had to give myself something. I've got, Army vet, investigator.
100% approve, man. That's awesome.
I was wondering if anybody would catch that. Thank you.
I saw that. Yeah. I thought you're being nice to me, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's his name.
Done on purpose. Yes, sir. Matt, any final words before we close it out?
No, man. First of all, again, thanks, Rob, for entertaining these conversations. And even though we don't always agree on everything, and I appreciate your candor and your ability to have tough conversations. And I always tell people I don't have to agree with everybody to like them. And I'm sure if we were at a bar at some point in time, and I tend to enjoy cocktails in excess. So your big jug of vodka doesn't scare me.
Yeah.
It's something that I probably might have already had once before.
Can you hold up that jug real quick, Rob? Can you hold that up?
This is just water. I drink a gallon of water.
Okay. Sure.
But now I was going to say I do have mugshots proving I too enjoy a cocktail every now and then. But Matt, what you were saying though is I think it's important too. I never want to be in a room where someone agrees with everything I say. You're in the wrong room, and you're never going to learn from yes men. So I appreciate that too. And again, too, this is going to lead into more conversations like this too. And for the people watching, the challenge that I have is ask me a question I've never heard. So I mean, and the Q&A is always good, and I won't take offense, just especially from Shipmate 69. I'm gonna steal that eventually.
Man, I've got now the questions are coming in, but I know we got to run. We'll do another one at some point because we didn't hit Benghazi. At some point, I want to talk about the Afghanistan pullout, and I think because that's the most recent, and it may not necessarily be tied in at all, but it's very suspect the way all of that happened. And now, knowing what we know about Gaza, where they've gotten their weapons, it's just there's some stuff to talk about there. So. Once again, gentlemen, thank you. And out of respect for Joni, because I felt bad that I made a statement she might have not said during our interview, I found a 5-minute clip of her explaining how she saw Extortion 17 in her own words. So as we sign off, I'm going to play that. I encourage everybody to watch it. And after that, I'll just come out with some closing remarks. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Thank you both, Matt, Rob. Really, really appreciate everything you've done,
gentlemen,
and the conversation. All right, guys.
Thanks.
U.S. military have not disclosed which of its units killed bin Laden, but sources say an elite division of the Navy SEALs carried out the operation. The White House and the U.S. Defense Department never comment on its activities for fear of jeopardizing future missions.
The Secretary of Defense, Bob Gates, forge an agreement.
Retired Air Force Captain Joni Marquez can't get the image out of her mind. A Navy SEAL ejected from a burning U.S. Chinook helicopter. Then his heat signature on an infrared camera fading from red to blue as life slipped from his body on the ground.
We had to sit and watch that, and I think that that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to do, was know that that man was, dying on the ground.
For 6 years, Marquez has kept a dark secret, that the single deadliest American incident in the Afghanistan war could have been prevented. August 6, 2011. The day 30 Americans, including 17 elite Navy SEAL Team 6 members from the same counterpart team that killed Osama bin Laden, were shot down in a Taliban ambush in Wardok's dangerous Tangi Valley. Marquez's story changes everything Americans know about that ill-fated mission and what happened with Extortion 17. Army Rangers had called in for an air weapons team. Marquez said the assault helicopters killed 6 enemy fighters, but 2 had managed to survive. The Rangers were out of danger, but Extortion 17 was still en route. The official Pentagon memo says the 2 fighters disappeared into a grove of trees and were never located. Marquez disputes that.
They were lying about it to the families, covering up what actually happened.
Monitoring the night surveillance cameras, Marquez and her crew watched as the 2 surviving Taliban fighters crawled away in an open field, rounding up more insurgents in a nearby village. Later, the crew watched as cylindrical objects, believed to be RPGs, were moved by the Taliban near the area where Extortion 17 attempted to land.
It's just one of those things where you know that it could have all been prevented.
Rules of engagement, changed under the Obama administration to prevent civilian casualties, kept them from firing against suspected targets without permission. Marquez says she and her team begged the command several times for permission to engage the enemy or turn back Extortion 17 in a drama that played out for precious minutes.
We knew right then that they weren't trying to listen to us.
U.S. Central Command did not comment when asked by Circa about Marquez's account. Joni's story conflicted with the final military finding, but a recently declassified military interview conducted with her crew in Afghanistan supports her account of what happened to Extortion 17. Marquez's aircrew told investigators the 2 escaped insurgents and others were in their line of sight. 6 to 8 personnel were running around the compounds to gather enemy reinforcements. Marquez's gunship was denied the chance to take out the Taliban, all but sealing the fate of those aboard Extortion 17. Aaron Vaughn, a father of 2, was one of those SEALs who died that day. His parents have long doubted the Pentagon's official story, but found hope when Marquez reached out to them 3 years ago.
I think she's one of the bravest women I've ever known in my life. She said that I would rather spend the rest of my life in Leavenworth than keep holding on to these secrets I know about what happened that night.
Marquez says her life has been devastated. Retired from the Air Force, she is still haunted and wants the rules of engagement to change. A military lawyer who served 20 years advising special forces and an expert in ROEs says there could now be a silver lining to the Extortion 17 tragedy, at least for those still fighting in the battlefield. Jeffrey Adicott says Marquez's bravery could bring changes to the military's current rules for engaging the enemy.
Right now, the rules of engagement are absolutely bizarre.
Adicott says there are tens of thousands of U.S. troops still in harm's way in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the rules cause them to second-guess when they can defend themselves.
They pour the blood of our soldiers out like water on the sand.
They lost a dad to this war. They lost someone that meant everything to them. And for me, I wasn't able to prevent that.
It took a lot for Marquez to come forward, but she says she's doing it to save lives.
I won't rest until some kind of justice is served. If that's something that doesn't happen, then obviously the ROE needs to change for them to be realistic.
For Circa in Washington, I'm Sarah Carter.
Boy, I've got to have her on the show. That's an incredible story. She's incredibly brave. I talked to her tonight by text. She was going to pop in, but she actually does counseling work now, and she had one too many clients to be able to come on tonight. So we're going to go one-on-one with Joni in the near future. You know, I really do appreciate Rob, the fact that he's come on time and time again and faced the, you know, he's been in the hot seat. As I've said from the beginning, if he has to be a part of a cover-up willingly or unwillingly, very, very difficult position, because you know what they do to people that break the narrative. If he's being 100% honest and he's the one that took the shots on Osama bin Laden, he's, you know, being forthright about everything he said about that and all the other things. Hey man, that's even more reason to appreciate. If I was him, I'd be pissed a little bit. It's like, dude, you just freaking believe me, you know? But there's still evidences that have not been provided. Then there's some pretty simple ones too that I think you could say and do. If I was him, I would reach out to Matt Bissonnette and I would have the conversation with him. And I would, you know, Matt Bissonnette's the one that wrote No Easy Day with a very different story about what happened on the raid that night. And I would find a way with him to come out with the real version of events, because you can't miss it that badly, where one guy sees it one way and it's you know, almost 180 degrees in opposition to the way you see it. I mean, if you're friends, you've worked together, you go find that guy, you make it happen. Same thing with, you know, call sign Reds. You just go get to the bottom of it with them and you find a way to prove it and put it to bed. And that way all these questions don't hang out. But hey, to each his own. All right. So guys who are watching right now, we're going to do the show after the show on my Instagram. I want you to do two things. All right. Come to the show after the show. You're going to hear Matt Cubbler's breakdown and analysis. Cubbler, sorry, Matt. His analysis and breakdown of really our last three interviews, kind of what he thinks about things maybe that he didn't say in this interview. And as well as, know this, it's going to be a live stream on Instagram, but it's only going to be available after the live stream ends. I'm going to post it for subscribers only. You guys, if you like my content, you will help me out tremendously. I'm not asking for much. It's $5 to subscribe, and that's where I'm putting out my most dangerous content. Dangerous for this reason. I'm going to be putting content. I know I've been saying this a while, but I'm sitting on a lot of stuff, especially that's local to Tennessee, as well as information that the powers that be, even nationally, don't want out there. But it's not the kind of thing that's going to get me censored or kicked off of Meta just by the nature of this information. Okay. It's not something that people really know about. So you'll support me in a big way if you subscribe to that. It's $5 a month. You can cancel anytime. And these kind of long form interviews like this will also be there, but stuff that you get nowhere else is going to be right there, subscription only on Instagram. So show after the show, give me about 3 minutes to hit the bathroom, grab some water. I will be right back with Matt Cubbler on Instagram, show after the show. And I will see you guys there. Thanks so much for tuning in to JSlay, Made in the USA.